Hey guys, Keon here, and today I'm going to be talking about Synthwave, explaining what is Synthwave and why a lot of people like it, so let's just jump into it. So Synthwave was created back in mid-2000s, and I'd say that it was there before Vaporwave, since Vaporwave came out around 2010, 2012. But Synthwave came from a bunch of small niche communities that helped develop its sounds. Synthwave takes influences from 1980s sounds in film, video games, and urban pop culture, and as of today, I'd say internet culture as well, along with composers like John Carpenter, Vangelis, and Tangerine Dream. Ivan Caswell from the Rise of Synths Synthwave documentary describes Synthwave as a DIY grassroots music movement. Synthwave is also known as Outrun, Retrowave, Future Synth, and other types of names as well, and is a very versatile and awesome genre of music. What's interesting is that Synthwave is also called Outrun based on the 1986 driving arcade game Outrun. Producer and musician Perturbator, or James Kent, explains that the style is mostly instrumental that often contains elements of 1980s sounds and aesthetics while incorporating instruments like electronic drums, gated reverb, and analog synthesizer bass lines and leads, all to mimic the style and sounds of that era. Not only is Synthwave pretty popular, but it's also been incorporated into retro-themed video games and media as well, most of the ones that feature Synthwave artists. Some of the most notable Synthwave tracks in urban media will have to be Power Glove soundtrack for Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon, and David Sandberg's short film Kung Fury. So who are the pioneers of Synthwave, you ask? French artists like David Grelier, Kavinsky, and Justice are labeled as some of the pioneers of Synthwave, and they all began creating compositions by 1980 composers that resemble or were associated with French house during the time. Next, we're going to be talking about some of the pioneers of Synthwave. The first three people that come into mind is Mitch Murder, who was known for creating After Hours, followed by Current Events, and Burning Chrome on Rosso Corsa Records in 2010 and 2011, followed by Laserhawk, who was one of the founding members of Rosso Corsa Records and was known for making albums like Redline and Dream Rider, followed by Dynatron, which is one of the forefathers of Synthwave with his LP Escape Velocity, which is also one of my favorite tracks. Over the years of doing Synthwave, these artists helped pioneer the genre to the point where more new artists were emerging, creating new sounds and adding more to the genre and to the scene. So Synthwave rose to popularity when the movie Drive came out in 2011, which featured a whole catalog of Synthwave artists, which helped push artists to the forefront of the genre, gaining notoriety and creating more fans of the genre. Due to the influx of people discovering the genre, some of the new artists coming about decided to gravitate to certain aspects of Synthwave, which was created by the earlier artists, creating a vast and wide variety of different Synthwave tracks and albums. Also, fun fact, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd is also a Synthwave song. Let's talk about some of the most notable and popular tracks and albums of the genre. When I think Synthwave, I think about Ace Buchanan's Magenta Nights. Magenta Nights would be considered a more traditional Synthwave album filled with catchy tunes and has a perfect balance of 80s influences and a mix of electronic music that sounds like it came from the future. My personal favorite track from the album is Buns of Steel. I'd say it's one of the best tracks and albums to date in the Synthwave genre. Next track I want to take a look at is Miami Nights 1984 Accelerated. This track takes a more outlandish approach with its alternate versions of the 80s set in a neon futuristic cyberpunk world with this sublime and dark aesthetic to it. And I'd say it's one of the most addicting tracks I've heard in a long time. Listening to this track feels like you're driving away in the night, leaving the city behind in a dystopian world where it rains a lot. I can't express how much I love this track and why it's such a good track that helped this genre. Now let's talk about some of the art and urban pop culture that Synthwave appears in. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think Synthwave is Kung Fu Fury and Far Cry Blood Dragon. Kung Fu Fury expresses a Synthwave aesthetic to the fullest, whether it's the 80s like theme to the movie, all the way to the characters and the Synthwave soundtracks that play in the background. The whole movie feels like you took a shot of nostalgia and Synthwave aesthetic at the same time. It encompasses the whole Synthwave and Outrun aesthetic in one movie. Next we have Far Cry Blood Dragon. When I first saw Far Cry Blood Dragon, I lost my mind. Besides GTA, this is the only other game that I know of to have a whole Synthwave aesthetic behind it. To the cheesy 80s like character dialogue, to the way they look and interact in the world, it's just insane. Also, the soundtrack, not to mention, was made by Power Glove, which is also one of the most notable Synthwave producers as well. The whole game is beautiful and almost pays homage to Synthwave to an extent. Now, I also want to talk about GTA Vice City because this game is also really important. I feel like Vice City helped a lot of people get into Synthwave since the whole game had this Synthwave track that matched the vibe. Because you also have to remember that Vice City is GTA's version of Miami Vice, so I can see how the Synthwave tracks would be important for this game and how it can impact it. We covered albums and tracks and also urban pop culture revolving around games and movies, but what does Synthwave art look like? So as we delve into the world of Synthwave, you then start to see some of the most amazing and aesthetic art that you'll find for an aesthetic. Besides the standard 3D rendered art, I think that's the most iconic type of art you'll see everywhere. You also see a lot of retro Tron grids with the sunset and the cyberspace, which I think expresses the wave really well. You see a lot of older retro cars like DeLoreans and models like that on top of this grimy old looking filter over palm trees and neon lights gives this futuristic Miami Vice kind of look. You tend to see a lot of cityscapes, sunsets, and long roads that leads to nowhere. When you are in Synthwave, the world doesn't exist, only the retro aesthetic of the cyberspace that reflects the feelings of the wave and the viewer only exists. Besides that, Synthwave also tends to use this twilight sunset aesthetic mixed with this nighttime life that you can visibly see in some amazing pieces. The art is clean yet leaves the viewer to their own imagination as it takes them through a synthetic world filled with nostalgia and a sense that you've been here before. The colors in all the pieces are beautiful too. I love the purples, blues, and pinks on top of the neon lights that just come together like a cake recipe to create some of the coolest art that I think you'll find very aesthetic. Overall, this aesthetic I think is really iconic and was able to spill into mainstream media. Even though Synthwave is similar to Vaporwave, I think more people can associate and connect with this genre. I love the evolution of the music and the artists. This is easily one of my favorite waves that I've found in a long time. I consume a lot of content, so Synthwave has a lot of it. There's too much of it, and honestly, I love it. From mainstream to underground, there's a lot to unpack and explore. There's so much content that it's hard not to see. The community and the artists are amazing and welcoming. And that's pretty much what Synthwave is. If you like this video, make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a lot. And if you have any ideas on what kind of content I should do next, let me know down in the comments. And also let me know what you think of this video and what I should do next. This is Keon, signing out.